guys, my name is Dwayne Sherrill, and this is My Wife as a Board Gamer, a show about my love for my wife, my love for board games, and what I'm doing to bring the two together. So my wife told me this story once, back when she was in college, and she was doing her student teaching, that she was introduced to a computer game called the Oregon Trail. Now, my wife is infatuated with history, but remember, video games weren't her thing, computer games included. But when she saw this, her love for history outweighed the other, and she gave it a shot. So when I came across this board game, it reminded me of that story. And I was a little hesitant to buy it because at the time, my wife was still getting her feet wet when it came to board games. And this game involved a little bit more strategy and complexity. But I bought it anyway, and I'm glad I did because she really enjoys it. The game is called Pioneer Days. Pretty much is the Oregon Trail, the board game. It's set in the American West, where we as pioneers are traveling across the wild frontier with our wagon train, using dice drafting to raise cattle, to prospect for gold, to gain resources and equipment, and to hire townsfolk, all the while preparing for the impending threat of storm, bandits, disease, and famine. Let's go to the table and see how it looks. So each player will get a character board. There will be a standard pioneer, which dictates what resources you will get at the bottom of this board. You will get a large wagon, which you'll place next to your board like this, creating a nice panorama. You will also get one cattle, some wood that you will place on your wagon. Each space on your wagon can hold 2 wood. You will also get a medicine. You can hold 2 medicine. You can never mix and match the medicine and the wood. You will also get 3 silver. Now, when you're first learning the game, you will play with the standard pioneer. But once you know how to play the game, you can, in the future, play with the advanced level, which actually gives your character a name and will change the starting resources and give your character a special ability. And this is the rest of the game set up on the table. On your right, you have your scoreboard, and each player will get one of these wooden wagons to keep track of their score. On your left-hand side, you have the main game board. Below the game board, you have townfolk that can be hired. You have the threat track. You have equipment tokens that you can acquire. You have wagons that you can purchase and add to your wagon train. You have wood, silver, cattle, medicine, and favorite tokens. And I will go into more detail on each of these through the talk through. So the game lasts 4 rounds, which is referred to as weeks in the rule book. And each week has 5 days. So each player will have 20 turns throughout the whole game. So on the first player's turn, let's say, and the first player gets this nice first player token, he would draw 3 dice out of this black bag, 3 random dice. Now, in setup, there are 5 colored dice in the game: yellow, green, red, blue, and black. And we would take 1 dice per color per player plus 1. So in a 2-player game, there would be 3 dice, 3 green, 3 red, and so on and so on. Now, let's say the first player takes this dice. I'm going to do this and just rolls it, okay? Let's say this was a medicine. I'll explain it better. All right, so the first player would take this dice, okay? And it will place it here. So you have 1 of 3 things you can do. You can either gather a medicine from the supply, you can get 6 silver, or you can hire this townfolk that's underneath it. Now, hiring townfolk give you an immediate effect when they hire. Some of them will give you an ongoing effect. Like, let's hold this closer. This townfolk, you would gain 1 silver for each cattle you have. So if I was to have 6 cattle on my wagon train at the time, I would get 6 silver right away. And then she would give me 1 victory point per cattle at the end of the game. So let's say I'm going to hire this townfolk. Now, the second player decides to go for this. And it's the cattle phase. Okay. Oh, I forgot to explain that all these dice don't have numbers. They have all pictures that correspond with the bottom of the game board. Okay, so let's say I take this cattle. So I will place it here. And I can either gain 1 cattle for my wagon train, get 4 silver, or hire this townfolk. So let's say I decide to get a cattle to go on my wagon train. Okay. Okay. So then we will move these dice over here to their corresponding color. And then, like I said, in a 2-player game, there's 3 dice drawn randomly. There's always going to be 1 left over. So the dice that's left over will move the corresponding color track. So this track will move up 1. Now, the threat track, as I said, is there's storms that can happen. And if a storm happens, you have to discard a wood from your wagon train for each wagon that you have, or that wagon will get damaged. And damage is worth -2 victory points at the end of the game. And also this will cover up, let's say you have a large wagon, and each of these spaces is where you can place items. This will cover that up, which will make it, you can carry less things on that wagon. Okay? Raid, if a raid happens, bandits show up and they rob you and they take half your money. Famine. If famine happens, for every cow that you have to discard a silver. And for every cow that you have that you can't discard the silver, that cow dies. And disease, for every townfolk that you have on your wagon train, there's no limit to townfolk you can have. But for every townfolk, if you cannot discard a medicine for that townfolk, then that townfolk dies. And that's real life that happens out in the wild frontier. And that all that happens whenever these all move up once. And whenever it gets there, the storm will happen, and then this will go all the way back and start over. So, like I said, each player is going to have 20 turns, and each turn you're drawing 3 random dice, and there's always going to be dice left over. So this is constantly moving. So you have to prepare as you're gathering your resources. You know what's coming, so you have to prepare for that stuff to happen. Now, if you remember, there are 5 colored dice, but there are only 4 colors here. Well, what does that mean? Well, let's say a black dice was left over. If a black dice is left over, every track moves up 1. So you have to be aware of that. Like, everything will happen. So, now, one thing I forgot to mention, that when you choose your dice, if you have 3 silver in your supply, so let's say I took 3 silver out the supply and paid it, I could take, and I grab this die, I could change the face to any side that I want. Okay? So let's go over this. You have medicine. You have cattle. I'm sorry, that's not cattle, that's the wood. You have cattle. You could gain an equipment token, and that's what's available right here. And on each player board, it will show you what all those equipment do. Okay? And the thing is, if you look at the equipment token, and it has that, see that wood in the symbol? So what this equipment token does is, if you took a die that had wood on it, you can activate that equipment and you could gain a medicine also. Anytime during a player's turn, if they have enough money, they could buy a wagon. So the large wagons cost $8. Small wagons cost $5. And you can add it to your wagon train, which will continue to create your panoramic. Okay. Now, at the end of the round, you visit these homesteads. You have the opportunity to. And certain homesteads, they want something. If you have this stuff to discard, to give back, like, so this one says, for 1 cattle and 1 wood and 1 gold token, you can also get one of these favor tokens So that one says get 4 favorite tokens, and each of these favorite tokens are worth 2 victory points at the end of the game. Okay, back to the equipment. You can go prospecting for gold. So when you prospect for gold, you go to this yellow bag and you reach in, you draw out a random token. You put it face down on your wagon, and this takes up 1 space. Now, it shows 1 piece of gold. Some of them show 2 pieces of gold. Some of them show 3 pieces of gold. And there are ways to get victory points per piece of gold, not per token, but per piece of gold. And you put that on your wagon train. And then you have the Joker symbol. So if you was to draw the Joker symbol, which is that, you could do any one of these actions here. Now, and if you wanted to hire a prospector, townfolk, you have to hire the one underneath the Joker, or you have to take that amount of money above the Joker. But the Joker, you could decide to take a cattle. Okay? Now, so the game, like I said, the game lasts 4 rounds. And at the end of the game, you will find out how many victory points. Whoever had the most victory points ends up being the winner. And like I said, there are different ways to get victory points. You got your town folk that give you victory points. You get victory points for the number of cattle that you have on your wagon train. And you get victory points for the gold that you have. And that pretty much, in a nutshell, is Pioneer Days. So that's Pioneer Days. This game is published by Tasty Minstrel Games. It's for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up. It lasts 45 minutes to an hour and a half. As you can tell, I really like this game. I love the components. I love the theme. But I love board games. So in this case, my opinion is irrelevant. So let's ask the real expert. Hey, honey.
Hi.
So what did you like about it?
I love the theme. I love history, and the Oregon Trail was important because it opened up the West to settlers. What I really like about this game is the way the mechanics support the theme. For instance, the disaster track. Those are things that really happened. You had to worry about Indians being mad because you were trespassing on their territory. You had to worry about the weather. You had to worry about disease and famine. So those were real things those were real obstacles and hardships that settlers had to deal with. Another thing I like is that townspeople, they were critical to success, but they were real people. So in the game, in order to get the benefit from having them added to your wagon train, you had to be able to sustain them. Diseases were a major reason why people did not make it successfully to settle to their destination. So having medicine packs to make sure your settlers made it safely that's just real. Another thing that I really like is the cattle. Cattle was wealth. And in this game, amassing cattle can really put you ahead of your competitors. So I love the game. It's fun. It's just the right level of complexity, but it's really thematic, and I love that part about it.
Isn't she cute? Well, this has been my wife as a board gamer, and I'll see you next time.